has been amazing in since I did the video yesterday on why you shouldn't take part on the in the binding spell ritual that was held. Uh, I got some people writing to me saying I didn't do it. Thank you for warning me. I did others that did it and says I did it. Fuck you. I don't care. I hate Trump. And the others who said I did it. What can I? Have I damaged myself? And I didn't know until I saw your video. Okay, you have been led to the slaughter. And the proof of that is the sheer hype behind everything. In the last 24 hours, New York Times and Time magazine have done major features on white people, particularly women, are now witches. Now they're not witches; they're Wiccans, and what a Wiccan is nothing. It's cosplay. It's nothing, but it's extremely dangerous because it's playing with magic. There was a famous character in the late 1800s who dressed himself up like a bird, put wings on himself, and threw himself off the Eiffel Tower, thinking he could fly like a bird because he was dressed like a bird and had bird wings that were made just like a bird. And he plummeted to his death. And that's exactly what these cosplay witches are, these ones you see in these magazines. Now, it's been going for a while now, good few months now. You had like Vogue magazine having a witchinista and this kind of thing. Fabulous witches. And you have like, and I've seen them on Australian TV, Irish TV, UK TV, American TV, Canadian TV. I'm seeing it all over now. These witches, these sorceress de jour, that have been whipped out. There's a favorite in every country gets whipped out on mainstream, and it's always pushing the Wicca thing and just say, well, we're fighting for the women who were killed by the Catholics, which they weren't. They were killed by the Protestants, and all the 6 million witches that were burned. No, maybe a few thousand were burned in total. No, I'd say about a few tens of thousands. The majority of them in Protestant countries like Scotland and Germany and Sweden, and many of them were men. A lot of them would have not even involved in witchcraft. They were declared witches because of heresies involving things like using folk spells and also being Catholics in a place where there was a tremendous sectarianism and a terror around Catholics and Protestants. So you weren't. There was the idea that like 6 million witches were rounded up and burned in Europe. The burning Thames. They were taken out of the burning Thames. That's all bullshit. Absolute bullshit. The majority of people who were killed during those religious Christian slaughters were Jews, Catholics, Protestants who were called witches, and a handful of witches in real witches into the bargain with that. Now it's very so that's all bullshit. So you don't have your victim complex isn't true to begin with, because you didn't suffer any worse than anyone else. In Catholic countries, which like Ireland and Iberia, witchcraft survived. To this day, where I live around here, modern 21st century rural Ireland, you'll hear people say, Mr. So and so down the road has the cure for colic. Mrs. So and so up the street has the cure for skin rashes. And these are all folk magic cures. To this day, 2019, it goes on in Catholic countries who were never persecuted. The only places in Ireland where witches were burnt were in areas run by English Puritan settlers, Kilkenny, and down around that area, Fermoy in County Cork, where Presbyterians, Puritans settled here. The Catholics never bothered with witches here, and they kept them as part of the culture, and still do. So there's never been a witchcraft revival because it never went away, for starters. Secondly, these witches, the real witches, are not obsessed with ritualism. This comes out of your Wiccan Read by Dorian Valentine, who rewrote the original Gardnerian Wicca, which was, a sort of a watered down version of Thelema, the deliberately designed not to work. And and then you have this today, you have people who grew up watching Harry Potter who now think they're witches, and they're having abortions to this is really going on. They have a male child, they have an abortion. Fetus deletus. That's how fucking sick they are. So it's I have very little sympathy for those types who took part in the binding spell last night. And was it last night? I think it was last night. And, or whenever it is going to be, or was. And I feel bad for the ones who went along for the laugh. Because, look, there's so. Look, I have a very large collection of books at home. And I spent an awful lot of money on. Because I wanted to know these things. And one of the most valuable books I have is a small book on Scottish courses. It was written about 150 years ago, and it's about that thick, and it cost me €200, and it's invaluable because it's recorded histories of witchcraft, actual uses in Scotland, and it says the same thing over and over again. Coursing doesn't work. Coursing is a disaster. Hexing is a disaster. A binding, or whatever you want to call it, whatever name you want to give it, doesn't work unless it's personal. So therefore, if someone personally attacked you and personally meant to do you harm, then the rules of magical engagement are perfectly clear. Then you can fight back. Even then, you have to have a very careful approach to it, because the hexes can and often do pass on to children. Why should the children who never did anything to you be damaged? Secondly, if it just in case it backfires, even if it is justified, do it on your deathbed. Don't do it in the prime of your life. Now, the consensus seems to be in all cultures, and not just in Celtic and this magic in this part of the world, but it's also in voodoo, and it's also in hoodoo, and it's also in juju, and it's also in uh, Cajun magic and stuff like that. Is between 9 and 11 moons the effect starts taking place, it begins to take place. So if you've cursed someone and they deserved it, and remember, only if they deserved it, between 9 and 11 moons, they will start to physically deteriorate. They'll start looking really bad. They'll start losing their friends. They'll start losing their charisma. They'll start losing their health. If the reverse happens and they seem to be thriving, well, then you're going to start deteriorating because the course didn't work. 9 and 11 moons. And the same thing. Now, what will happen? These people who took now the Trump thing, like again, it doesn't matter. Your political feelings have nothing to do with it. I'm a feminist. I don't like Trump because I'm feminist. I'm going to curse him. It was only if Trump went down to your house and said, "Listen, you fucking dickhead, you are never going to work again because you are a woman, and I'm personally putting a list out to employers to not employ you. Otherwise, Trump doesn't deserve it." It's only when it's personal and direct, and this is when it will blow back. So I expect in between 9 and I'm not saying this gloatingly. You have my condolences, especially the ones who thought it was a party and took part in them. Between 9 and 11 moons, which is what it's now. It's now what, up the end of October. So late next summer, August, September. Expect visits to the doctors. Expect relationships have fallen apart. Expect children not well. Expect your looks suddenly vanishing. Expect people abandoning you. Expect your mental health going into extreme deterioration. Expect pets suddenly dying. Expect Trump riding on the crest of a wave. But that's not fair. But that's magic.